Why, welcome! I am Neko, and I will be reading Golden Terrace by Zai Wu Bin Bai, the 7th version. Now, before we get started, just some general info on these recordings. This is in no way any kind of professional recording. This is just me reading live to my Discord book club. There will be a lot of me stumbling through this and a bit of commentary in the middle, so sorry if that's not your cup of tea. I am also not at all fluent in Chinese, though I am trying my best to at least pronounce everything correctly. The idea to record the readings was done because the only other finished recording of Golden Terrace is the one of the original translation by Peach Flower House, done by the wonderful Miss Rosie over on Rosebuds Reads. Big shout out to her for introducing me to this series at all. And I thought it would be good for accessibility reasons, for having both versions available for the sake of comparison, just for the general public. And with all that said, let's get started. Prologue. In the early summer of the 25th year of Yuan Tai, amid the continued invasion of the northern border by Eastern Tartars, the Northern Border Defense Army, known as the Northern Yan Cavalry, joined the garrison of Tong and Yu prefectures at the Wuding River, and successfully forced the Tartar cavalry back over 800 li to Shichou Pass. In the 8th month of the same year, the Wuzhou tribe of the Eastern Tartars presented a petition for surrender, expressing willingness to submit to the Zhou Empire and pay yearly tribute. On the 16th of the 8th month, the envoys on both sides finalized the treaty in the army camp beside the Wuding River. The Wuzhou tribe pledged furs, medicinal herbs, horses, and gold, among other goods. The Khan's own son would be sent to the Imperial College to learn the etiquette of the Central Plains. In the 9th month, an imperial edict ordered the commander of the Northern Yan Cavalry, the Marquis of Dinghai Fusheng, to escort the Eastern Tartar envoys to the capital to pay their respects. The Wuzhou tribe had withdrawn, and peace had been restored to the north. Fusheng had no other pressing obligations. He put his affairs in order and personally led an elite cavalry unit to escort the delegation south. On the 9th of the 9th month, the troops were taking the envoy through Qingsha Gorge when the ground shook, rocks rained down, and the mountain road collapsed. The horses bolted, and the carriage carrying the young Eastern Tartar prince was smashed to pieces by a boulder. Although Fusheng was wary of the dangerous and narrow terrain of Qingsha Gorge, it was within the borders of his own nation. He had never anticipated such a disaster. There was no time to worry about the prince under the rockslide. At once, he turned his horse to lead the others back toward the mouth of the narrow pass. Dust dispersed throughout the valley, painting everything around them the color of sand. Amid the chaos, a finely crafted crossbow took aim. The cold, sinister gleam of the arrowhead pointed toward the man racing away on his horse. In a split second, intuition, sharpened by years of life and death on the battlefield, saved that man. It was as if Fusheng had eyes on the back of his head. He ducked and yanked on the reins as the arrow winged toward him. The horse skidded to a halt, rearing up and spinning on the spot, and the crossbow bolt brushed his back before piercing the ground. Who wanted to kill him? This chilling question flashed through Fusheng's mind before he pulled back to reality by the alarmed cries of his soldiers. "General, watch out!" The boulder above him enveloped the sky as it fell. He couldn't see anything of the path behind him. On the 9th of the 9th month of the 25th year of Yuan Tai, the Eastern Tartar envoys were attacked at Qingsha Gorge in Tong Prefecture. The young Eastern Tartar prince died on the spot, and no other members of his delegation survived. Fusheng, commander of the Northern Yan cavalry, who had been escorting the envoys, was struck by a boulder, his leg severely injured. It was unlikely he would ever recover. When the news reached the capital, shock rippled from the imperial court down to the lowliest commoner, sending the entire realm into an uproar. Outraged, the Yuan Tai emperor ordered the 3 judicial officers to thoroughly investigate the case. He also issued a special decree as consolation to Fusheng, adding a hefty sum of grain to his annual salary as Marquis of Jingning, conferring on him the prestigious title of Defender General of the state, and bestowing upon him a gold seal with a purple ribbon to denote his high status. Fusheng was allowed to retain his position while he returned to the capital to recuperate. News of Fusheng's injury spread through the city like wildfire. While many previously speculated about who would inherit command of the Northern Yan army in light of his injuries, the emperor's special decree temporarily silenced the gossips. Fusheng was still to be the commander-in-chief of the Northern Yan army, and retain his military authority despite leaving his northern post. However, if General Fu knew what was good for him, after returning to the capital, he would surely step down and cede his power to the emperor. In exchange for his legs, he would receive a lifetime of wealth and glory. Such a gift would make His Majesty seem magnanimous towards meritorious subjects and prove he rewarded their efforts handsomely. Yet the Marquis of Jingning and commander of the Northern Yan army, at the center of these rumors, made no moves after receiving the imperial edict. It wasn't until the end of the 9th month that Fusheng submitted a memorial to the throne detailing his arrangements for transferring the military affairs of the northern garrison and requesting that the emperor permit him to retire from his post. The Yuan Tai emperor, at last, breathed a sigh of relief. He rejected Fusheng's resignation as a matter of course and allowed him to return to the capital. Everyone in the city counted down the days, eagerly awaiting the chance to see with their own eyes the sorry state of the renowned Marquis of Jingning. One morning, at sunrise, thousands of miles away, a small carriage surrounded by soldiers departed from the heavily guarded Yan Prefecture city and sped toward the capital. End prologue. Chapter 1. If one traveled south of Yan Prefecture, past Guangyang, through Baitan, into Miyun, the capital would be in sight. Though it was nearing the 10th month, it was a drought year, and the heat worsened the further south you went. The sweltering temperatures were truly unbearable, and by midday, the hundreds of elite cavalrymen who had been riding day and night were completely exhausted. Their leader shaded his eyes to gaze into the distance. He spotted a small tea house not far down the road and gently pulled the reins to slow the column's pace. After the carriage behind him caught up, he lightly knocked on its wall. "Sir, we've been traveling all night. Why don't we take a break before proceeding?" The curtains of the carriage parted slightly, and the weak, hoarse voice of a man drifted out, accompanied by the bitter smell of medicine. "Is there a rest stop ahead? Let's regroup there. Brothers, thank you for your hard work." The soldier acknowledged the order, and the group struck out toward the roadside shelter. Dust rose in their wake, attracting the attention of the travelers already resting there. This group flew no banners. They wore green martial robes with narrow sleeves and crossed collars. Each of them had a strong build and an intimidating aura. Even though they did not reveal their identities, it was clear they weren't to be trifled with. The tea-house owner, accustomed to seeing all sorts of people come and go, made no comment. The leader got off his horse and handed the owner a small ingot of silver, telling him to serve whatever food and drink was available, then instructed his subordinates to rest. He found a table in the shade, wiped it clean, and arranged for hot tea and a few snacks. Then he went outside to help a drawn, weak, and sickly young master down from the carriage. The man's complexion was pallid, his steps unsteady. He was only able to walk with the aid of the soldier's supporting arm, and it took him ages to cross even the short distance from the carriage to the tea-house. When he finally sat down at the table, coughing several times, as if the next step would be his last, the other guests all sighed in relief. It was tiring just watching him. It wasn't until they relaxed that they realized they had been nearly possessed by the sight. Although the man looked ready to drop dead at any moment, he had a certain magnetism that captured one's attention. He had striking one-in-a-million good looks, though his face had not an elegant, girlish beauty and a complexion like blushing spring blossoms, the type so popular in the capital these days. Rather, shapely eyebrows framed phoenix eyes, swept up at the corners. He had a gaze as piercing as winter stars, a sharp, straight nose, and thin lips. His handsomeness was the cold and cutting kind. The man was very tall and seemed accustomed to looking down at people. His eyes were half-lidded, exuding an indolent fatigue. He was nothing but skin and bones. The tea-house's coarse porcelain bowls seemed heavy enough to break his wrists. Yet even sitting quietly, his back was ruler straight, like a stalk of bamboo or a long sword tempered by fire. Although this sword was covered in scars, its honed edge could still draw blood. His weak constitution would not prevent him from dominating the world. The nearby merchants, engrossed in the sight, unconsciously stretched their necks like a flock of geese until the young man slowly finished his water and slammed the porcelain bowl on the table in irritation. "Your necks are so long they could tie up a donkey. Enjoying the show?" Sitting beside him, the soldier, wolfing down his meal, shuddered. Some of these geese pulled their necks back self-consciously, but a few particularly enthusiastic ones went up to talk to him. "Where are you going, Gongzi? Are you going to the capital, too?" Zhao Shun, the soldier who had been diligently serving his master, tensed. He was ready to string this man up outside as soon as his lord said the word. Unexpectedly, the usual antisocial young master tolerated the questioning. "I came from Yan Prefectural City in the north. I'm heading to the capital to seek medical treatment." The group was dressed casually, unarmed, and only a modest carriage procession. While the guards were imposing, the young master with them was dressed more plainly than young men of the capital, so the merchants guessed he might be the scion of some influential family in Yan Prefecture. Yan Prefectural City was a strategically important military border outpost. The city was full of intimidating characters, and it was normal to be accompanied by subordinates of military backgrounds. It would be improper for the merchants to ask about this young master's condition directly. He changed the topic to something lighter and more remarkable. "Gongzi, since you came from the north, did you hear the news about that Marquis of Jingning, General Fu, is returning to the capital?" "The news that the Marquis of Jingning, General Fu, is returning to the capital. His elderliness is returning home in glory. What a grand procession it must be." Zhao Shun nearly choked on his tea. The young master raised his eyebrows and replied, sounding intrigued. "I hadn't heard, but it seems you know a lot about this Fu, Marquis of Jingning." "I wouldn't say that," the man smiled and waved off the question. "Any merchant who travels between the north and south can tell a few stories about General Fu. For the years his elderliness protected the northern border, the roads have been safe and it's been much easier to do business than in the past. Even the people in the capital admire General Fu. You have no idea. Last year, when he led the northern Yan cavalry to defeat the Tartars, I came back from selling furs up north, and everyone was saying with General Fu on the northern border, the capital can sleep peacefully. The storytellers in the tea houses, singers, actors in the theaters, they were all talking about him. The Northern Yan Cavalry was the Zhou Empire's northern bulwark. Its predecessors had been the border garrison led by the Duke of Ying, Fu Jian, and the Northern Yan Cavalry had been commanded by the Fu family since its inception. The Han people of the Central Plains called the nomadic groups who controlled the northern steppes Tartars. Several decades ago, the Tartars had been split by internal turmoil. Some tribes were forced westward and intermarried with the Hu and Sogdian people of the western regions. These, the people of the Central Plains referred to as Western Tartars. The other tribes, who occupied the richer central and eastern steppes, were called Eastern Tartars. 23 years ago, not long after the Yuan-Tai Emperor, Sun Shun, ascended the throne, several Eastern Tartar tribes had invaded the Zhou Empire. Wherever the Tartars rode, they burned, killed, and looted. 9 out of 10 houses were emptied of their occupants, and tens of thousands of people burned in the flames of war. After the long-standing era of peace in the previous emperor's reign, the ministers were daunted by the prospect of war. When the Eastern Tartars marched south, half the ministers had the gall to suggest peace talks. But the Yuan-Tai emperor was in his prime, and as the supreme ruler of the empire, he was unwilling to bow to the demands of the barbarians. Coincidentally, Fujian had recently been transferred from Lingnan to Gan Prefecture as the regional military commissioner. The Yuan-Tai emperor ordered him to mobilize the 3 garrisons of Gan, Ning, and Yuan prefectures. Fujian, his 2 sons, and the generals under his command assembled an army of 100,000 and beat the Tartars back beyond Zhou's borders. Fujian's eldest son, Fu Tingzhong, crossed the Great Wall himself and led his troops into the heart of the grasslands. He came within inches of capturing the Eastern Tartar capital, only failed due to his father dying of illness before the point of victory. After this campaign, Fujian was posthumously awarded the title of Duke of Ying and Grand Pillar of the state. His eldest son, Fu Tingzhong, inherited the title of Duke of Ying and governed the regional military affairs of the Gan, Ning, and Yuan prefectures. His second son, Fu Tingxing, was appointed bulwark general of the state and took similar charge of the Yan and You prefectures. These 2 brothers built an impenetrable northern defense line for the Zhou Empire, and the border army led by the Fu family was hailed as the Northern Yan Cavalry. Between the 6th and 18th year of Yuan-Tai, there was no war on the border. The Northern Yan Cavalry was a formidable deterrent. Peace lasted until the 19th year of Yuan-Tai, when Fu Tingzhong was assassinated by the Eastern Tartars, who formed an alliance with the Zhi tribe on the northern frontier and struck at the Zhou Empire once more. Fu Tingxing himself led an army deep into the enemy's encirclement and perished on the battlefield. History almost repeated itself as the army poured over the border. This time, however, there were no elite soldiers left, and the Yuan-Tai emperor was no longer as bellicose as he had been in his youth. The ministers argued for several morning court sessions whether to fight or sue for peace, and finally made a baffling yet canny decision. They pushed Fu Tingzhong's eldest son, Fu Shen, not yet 20, onto the battlefield. The Eastern Tartars held a deep hatred for the Fu family. This entire invasion was an act of revenge. Fu Shen had joined the army at a young age and learned the ins and outs of the battlefield alongside his father and uncle, and was considered to have the markings of a talented general. But looking back, how could these ministers comfortably hide in the shadows and let a young man face these dangers alone? Unbelievably, the Fu family seemed to truly be a constellation of commanders blessed by the general star. Fu Shen was a once-in-a-generation strategic genius, surpassing even his father. Footnote, Qi Xia, which is Polis, the sixth star in the Southern Dipper, corresponding to one's destiny in generalship. The nearby Tang and Xuan prefectural garrisons proved too unwieldy to rely on, but when Fu Shen was nominated as commander, he wasn't expecting to get help from his own people. He abandoned the idea of using the rest of the Han army entirely. Instead, he borrowed cavalry from the Yeliang tribe of the Western Tartars to supplement his own Northern Yan cavalry, offering a promise to opening new trade routes and permitting their settlement within Zhou borders. Then, as Fu Shen rallied the Northern Yan cavalry and fought the Zhe tribe's main force within the three passes of Yan Prefecture, the Yeliang cavalry outflanked the Tartar-Zhe coalition from the northwest, nearly neutralizing the crisis at the northern border. After the war, the Yeliang tribe settled within Zhou's border, their cavalry mixing into the northern Yan cavalry. Claiming that the northern defensive line was too long and inconvenient to mobilize, Fu Shen handed the command of the Gan and Ning prefectures back to the capital and focused on fortifying the border defense line connecting Xuanhuai, Yuan Prefecture, and Yan Prefecture. Following the Battle of the Three Passes, as his first campaign came to be known, Fu Shen officially became the commander-in-chief of the Northern Yan Cavalry. However, after Fu Tingzhong's death, Fu Jian's third son, Fu Tingyi, had already inherited the title of Duke of Ying, so Fu Shen was instead conferred the title of Marquis of Jingning. Given Fu Shen's contributions, he might have legitimately been granted the title of Duke had not the senior ministers jumped out to object, crying that Fu Shen was too young to command the respect owed such a title. For some reason, His Majesty agreed. Anyone with eyes could see His Majesty was scared of the Fu family. He feared they would produce a powerful line of dukes glorified throughout the ages. But some people were destined to swim against the current. In just a few short years, the Marquis of Jingning, Fu Shen, with the Northern Yan cavalry in hand, became a pillar of the Zhou Empire. He steadfastly positioned himself as a thorn in the side of the Tartar and Zhe tribes. The peace and prosperity on the northern border in recent years could largely be credited to him. As long as Fu Shen remained in the army, even as a figurehead, he would be the greatest deterrent to threats from the north. The young master listened with a smile at first, but when he heard "the capital can sleep peacefully," his smile faded, and he reached for the bowl on the table. Zhao Xun saw that his lord was lost in thought, so he quickly grabbed the teapot and interrupted. "Gongzhi, would you like some snacks?" The young master seemed to return to his senses. He picked up the bowl and took a sip of hot tea. The corners of his mouth curled up, though there now seemed to be an edge to his smile. If word spreads, how many people will lose sleep, I wonder? A nearby guest in a bamboo hat, drawn in by their conversation, interjected cryptically. "The Marquis of Jingning has numerous military achievements on the northern frontier, but his hands are stained with the blood of countless lives. People say what goes up must come down. If you think about it, isn't that fitting? The famous generals of the past either died young or left to live in solitude. All of them were incarnations of the general star, destined to be plagued by death. If you ask me, the Marquis of Jingning was born under the star of 7 killings. Footnote, a more modern name for the general star. It confers mastery of strategy and unyielding radicalism, ruthless in execution. The bowl in Zhao Xun's hand shattered with a loud crack. Everyone looked over, dumbfounded, and the tea-house became awkwardly silent. "Look at that grip strength of yours. Next time I'll buy you an iron bowl so you don't waste good crockery." The young master's pleasant expression remained unchanged as he added, "Don't forget to pay for that." Zhao Xun ducked his head and hummed in agreement. The conversation ground to a halt. No matter how nicely packaged the man in the hat's words were, they were neither auspicious nor pleasant. This time, only a bowl was broken. The next time he spoke, he might be surrounded and beaten up. Yet the eccentric young master watched the spectacle with relish, apparently unaffected by the atmosphere. He smiled. "Interesting. If it's as you said, a 7 killing-star destiny dictates either a short or a lonely life. Since the Marquis of Jingning is grievously injured, he probably won't see old age. Does that mean he can find a wife this year?" Zhao Xun was speechless. Someone smacked the table and stood. "A real man should have no problem finding a wife. A great hero like the Marquis of Jingning could have any woman he wants." "Damn right," another echoed. "And if he likes men, there are plenty of good lads out there wanting to marry him too." A thunderous coughing fit rang out in the tea-house. The previous dynasty had considered marriage between men to be elegant. Though the Zhou Empire prohibited such marriages, the upper classes didn't see it as taboo. There was even precedent of an emperor bestowing marriages between men. The Marquis of Jingning was a famous and wealthy bachelor, the dream husband of many unmarried maidens in the capital. But since he remained unwed, some guessed he had other inclinations. The topic of romance piqued everyone's interest, and the conversation picked up again. The young master stopped chatting and merely listened to them discussing the personal life of the Marquis of Jingning. A smile still curved his lips, as if he was listening to an extremely interesting story. After a while, Zhao Xun ventured softly, "Guangzhi, it's past noon. Should we go?" "Yes, let's get moving." The young man offered his arm for Zhao Xun to help him up and hastily cupped his hands in a salute to the merchants. "My friends, I am in a hurry to reach the capital. I'll be going ahead." Everyone returned to the courtesy and bade him farewell. Zhao Xun helped the young master into the carriage and lowered the curtain. When the procession had traveled a few hundred feet, he heard a voice call his courtesy name from inside. "Changshan, hand me one of those pills." "Didn't Dr. Du tell you to take the medicine an hour before entering the capital?" Zhao Xun took out a purse containing a slender porcelain bottle. "It will take us another 4 hours to reach it." "Stop yapping." A hand reached out from beneath the curtain and snatched the bottle. The capital garrison is just ahead. We can fool commoners with this get-up, but we'll certainly be recognized when we reach the camp. It'll be too late to fake lameness then." Zhao Xun grumbled, "But you really are lame." This enigmatic young master was the very same Marquis of Jingning who was apparently plagued by death. Fu Shen tilted his head back, swallowing a brown pill the size of a knuckle, and scoffed. "Changshan, between a general who's expected to recover and one who will never walk again, which do you think would keep you up at night?" Zhao Xun fell silent. Fu Shen tossed the porcelain bottle back to him. He closed his eyes and felt numbness spread through his limbs. Softly, he said, "Onward." End Chapter 1. Chapter 2. In the evening, at the Ruifeng Battalion barracks 100 li from the capital, Commander Zhong He personally welcomed the travelers. Zhao Xun stepped forward to greet him, but Zhong He had already rushed past him to the carriage. Bowing, he called, "I, Zhong He, the commander of the Ruifeng Battalion, have come to pay respects to General Fu." The Ruifeng Battalion ranked highest among the 5 major camps in the capital. As a third-rank official, Zhong He was of high status himself. However, the Marquis of Jingning was first rank, and was therefore due the utmost respect. A bandaged hand lifted the curtain, and the strong smell of medicine drifted out. Fusheng was armorless, dressed only in his robes. His chest and arms were swathed in bandages. His complexion was ashen, his lips colorless, and his hair loose around his shoulders. He seemed to be hanging on by a thread, so weak the slightest breath of wind could knock him over. Only his eyes still held any life. They were dark and calm, a broken knife that gleamed with icy light, still capable of striking a fatal blow. Fusheng nodded. "Commander Zhang, it's good to see you. I beg your pardon. I currently have limited mobility," he said around a cough. "So you'll forgive me if I cannot rise to greet you properly." Zhang He had heard the Marquis was seriously injured and unable to walk, but he had never imagined his injuries to be so dire. Originally, he hadn't truly believed the rumor that Fusheng was disabled, but seeing it now with his own eyes, he had no choice but to accept it. In Fusheng's current state, he had no chance of making a full recovery. On the contrary, he would be unlikely to see another decade. Zhang He's eyes went dark, and he felt suddenly chilled to the bone. In his grief, he discarded the distant manners between officials and called him by his courtesy name. "Jing Yuan, your injuries. You..." His trembling voice and his eyes, reddening at the rims, made it seem like Fusheng wasn't just injured, but a moment away from dropping dead. Fusheng's lips twitched, and he sighed. "Thank you for your concern, Commander Zhang. It really is just a leg injury. It's not life-threatening. Hey, Chongshan, go get a handkerchief for Commander Zhang to wipe his tears." Zhang He had served the Yuan prefectural army in his early years, and was an old acquaintance of both Fusheng's father, Fu Tingxiong, and his uncle, Fu Tingxin. He was, in a sense, almost an uncle to Fusheng himself. After Fusheng took over the Northern Yan cavalry, he had sequestered himself on the northern border for years on end, refusing to come home, and so had lost touch with many of his family's old contacts. But at this moment, Fusheng's haggard appearance made Zhang He forget all about the differences in their stations as he was reminded of the lively youth always trailing behind Fu Tingxin as a boy. When he thought of Fusheng alone, without parents, children, or even a partner by his side to support him, and suffering from such debilitating injuries at such a young age, his heart ached with regret. "It's all our fault. We couldn't prevent them from sending you into battle back then, and after so many years, it's led to today's tragedy. How can I face your father and uncle in the afterlife?" "Commander Zhang." Fusheng gripped the carriage, troubled. "Let's not talk about the past. I'm fine. There's no need for you to feel burdened by this." Zhang He frowned in disappointment. Fusheng was indeed cold-hearted. He still wouldn't call him uncle. It was getting late. Fusheng and his company were anxious to enter the capital, so his carriage departed after a short rest. After switching horses, the elite cavalrymen of the Northern Yan army continued towards the city, barely making it inside the walls before the gates closed. Fusheng had been to the capital 3 months ago, and it had hardly changed, still bustling and prosperous as ever. The soldiers of the Northern Yan army, on the other hand, rarely got anywhere near the capital. They gawked at the busy streets around them, attracting attention from everyone they passed. Fusheng called Xiaoxun over. "Take me home first, then bring them out to look around. I'll cover any expenses. No whores, no gambling, and no causing trouble. Now, go on." Without thinking, Xiaoxun exclaimed, "I can't do that!" "I'm telling you to go, so go." Fusheng's voice was thin from exhaustion, but his tone was still tart enough to make the listener want to smack him. "If you keep following me around day and night, my reputation will be ruined. If you spoil my chances at marriage, I expect you to perform all the duties of a filial son in my dotage." Xiao Xun wouldn't win against an argument with this scoundrel and grudgingly agreed. The carriage rattled over the worn cobblestone roads. This area was full of well-to-do mansions, and the paved rooftops stacked together seemed more peaceful and majestic than ordinary houses. The Marquis of Jingning's manor was located at the northern corner of the street. The old steward removed the wooden threshold and welcomed the carriage in. Seeing their master being carried in by his subordinates, the servants hesitated with their hands tucked into their sleeves, not daring to step forward. After Fusheng was conferred the title of Marquis, he had moved out of the Duke of Ying's manor into his own residence. Yet he put no care into this large house at all. The staff were a gaggle of weak, old, and sickly servants that his stepmother, Lady Qin, had rounded up a few years ago to send to him. But since Fusheng was away from the capital year-round, he had built no accord with them. Whenever he did make it home, they scurried into hiding like mice who'd encountered a cat. All of them hung back in the kitchen or the servants' quarters, and never came out unless absolutely necessary. Fortunately, though they feared their absent master, they did not neglect their duties. Xiao Xun carried Fusheng into the bedroom and asked the servants for hot water. He helped his commander remove his outer robes, wiped his hands and face, and settled him on the bed. Yet the instant Xiao Xun was finished tidying Xiao Xun was finished tidying up, Fusheng traitorously chased him out. "Go! I'll have someone keep the door open for the men tonight. The backyard has rooms you can stay in. Sorry for the poor hospitality." The pills he had taken that afternoon had a strong sedative effect. Fusheng had endured the drowsiness the entire journey back while dealing with the soldiers from the barracks around the capital. Now he could scarcely keep his eyes open. Almost as soon as Xiao Xun closed the door behind him, he sank into a deep slumber. The steward kept listening beneath the window-sill until he heard deep, even breathing from the inside. He tiptoed out of the inner courtyard along the wall and asked the cook to prepare some congee that was easy to digest and could be kept warm until the master woke up. Though Fusheng's party hadn't formed any kind of grand procession, they had entered along a public road, and news of his return spread quickly. It was too late in the day for visitors, so the steward saw Xiao Xun and the other soldiers out and closed the main gate, leaving only a corner gate open for the men when they returned. However, less than 2 hours after Fusheng fell asleep, there was an unexpected, urgent knock on the door. The gatekeeper didn't dare disrespect the guest and rushed inside to report it. The old steward hurried over on less than nimble legs. Upon reaching the manor gate, he was shocked to be confronted with a group of men in black, riding towering horses and carrying swords at their waist. Frightened, he ventured, "May I ask who's calling?" A tall man urged his horse to the front of the group and stopped in the light just beyond the shadow of the eaves, the cloud pattern on his midnight blue robes flowing like running water in the flickering light. The silver Pegasus embroidered on the coat's back flapped its wings as if about to take flight. Moonlight and lamplight blended to illuminate a beautiful face with smiling eyes and thin lips. "No need to be afraid, sir," he said, nodding politely. The hand holding the reins was slender and pale. The sleeves of his robe slipped toward his elbow, revealing a sliver of an iron wrist guard. "I am the Imperial Inspector of the Feilong Guard, Yan Xiaohan. I have come to call on the Marquis of Jingning on the orders of His Majesty. A renowned physician has come with me to take a look at his injuries. Please inform the Marquis we are here." The old steward didn't know which rank this uniform signified, but he had worked as a servant in the Duke of Ying's manor for several decades and was all too familiar with the name Yan Xiaohan. His heart thumped in his chest, and he stammered, My master has traveled a long way. He is injured and has just fallen asleep. My lord, if you please. The Feilong Guard were known to be tyrants, and because of this, no one dared to stand in their way. Yan Han peered down at the wizened old man, his smile never wavering. Sir, you seem to be afraid of me meeting your marquis. He had guessed correctly. The fact that Yan Han and Fu Shen were bitter enemies was no secret to those who had served the Duke of Ying's household, nor to the officials of the court. Third-ranked official, commanding general of the left Shenwu army and imperial inspector of the Feilong Guard, Yan Han was the most powerful official the capital had seen in years. He was the emperor's right-hand man, his eyes and ears, and in short, someone every wise man wanted to avoid. Fu Shen had just returned to the capital in disgrace, while Yan Han boasted a lofty position. If he was here to take personal revenge, how would their marquis, with his weak constitution, ever withstand it? The steward looked as anxious and terrified as he sounded when he answered. This servant wouldn't dare, but my master's condition is very poor right now. Lord, I beg for your understanding. Yan Han took the opportunity to peer around the Marquis of Jingning's manor. The courtyard was neat and tidy, clearly well maintained by the servants, but the place felt desolate. He sighed softly. Sir, I'm not here to cause trouble for him. Never mind, no need to inform him. I'll just go in and take a look at him and leave. No matter how strenuously the old steward insisted, it was futile. He gave up and led the way. Yan Han left the Feilong guardsmen who had accompanied him in the yard to avoid any potential misunderstandings, and only brought a gentle, scholarly young man with him into the inner courtyard. The expansive Marquis's manor was largely empty. A few trees planted in the yard stretched their branches toward the sky. If the yard wasn't swept, the leaves would soon cover the ground, as if the bleak autumn mood of the entire capital fell within these walls. This late in the evening, the other courtyards in the residence were dark and deserted. The only thin stream of yellow light came from the window of the main room, which somehow made the whole house seem all the lonelier. Yan Han kept his silence, but the young man walking beside him shook his head and murmured, "The Marquis of Jingning has such a noble lineage, and such great achievements. How can his home?" The steward sighed sympathetically. "The Marquis spends all year guarding the border. He hasn't spent any time at home for nearly 5 years, and there is no virtuous wife to manage the household. The only ones left are these old and useless servants who cannot share the Marquis's worries." Still rambling on, he opened the door of the main hall for their guests. After inviting the pair to take a seat, he hit the lamps and ordered someone to serve tea. "Please wait a moment. I will bring the Marquis." No sooner had he finished speaking than a muffled thud came from the inner room on the west side, as if someone had fallen from a high place. The steward's hands trembled, but before he could react, Yan Han, who had been standing beside him just a moment ago, moved like the wind and in the blink of an eye burst into the inner room. End chapter 2. Yes, they are enemies. We will find out exactly what happened about that. Not soon, but it will be sprinkled throughout the first volume. We'll get to the lovers part eventually. Just give it a little time. Chapter 3. Fu Shen never slept very well. The medicine he took caused heart palpitations, nightmares, shortness of breath, and countless other side effects. Caught between sleep and wakefulness, he felt trapped and dizzy, as if a boulder was pressing on his chest. Precisely the sensation people commonly called night terrors. Grasping towards consciousness, Fusheng slowed his breathing and tried to blink. When he regained control of his limbs, he reached out a hand to brace himself on the bed and attempted to sit up. But he forgot his leg was broken, and he couldn't feel below his knees. He overbalanced and he fell off the bed with a thud. The bed wasn't high, but a footrest sat just underneath. When Fusheng fell, his waist struck the footrest, and the back of his head smacked the cold tile of the floor. His vision went dark and his ears rang. Before he even registered the pain, someone kicked open the bedroom door and rushed to scoop him up. The man's sleeves were cool from the autumn night air, but his palms were warm. Fusheng's head rested on the man's chest, his face pressed against the smooth fabric of a midnight blue brocade robe. The collar and sleeves exuded the warm scent of agarwood. This person seemed very familiar, but pressed so close, he had the air of a stranger. The man tensed as Fusheng's breath warmed the thin fabric over his heart. He placed Fusheng back on the bed and set a steady hand on his forehead. "Why is your breath so hot? Do you have a fever?" His blurry vision gradually subsided with the pain. The moment his eyes focused on the newcomer, he shoved that hand away. "What the hell are you doing here?" The old steward and the young member of the Feilong Guard, who had both hurried in after Yan Xiaohan, heard the cold question the moment they entered the room. They stopped in their tracks, thinking there was certainly truth to the rumor that both these men were hard to handle. Yan Xiaohan closed his eyes and composed himself. Not wanting to argue with someone so ill, he replied stiffly, "You have a fever. Sit up and drink some water. I brought someone to take your pulse and prescribe medicine for you." Fusheng turned aside and said indifferently, "Don't bother. To what do I owe the pleasure of a visit from Lord Yan to my humble abode so late at night?" Yan Xiaohan crossed to the table, where he picked up the teapot and poured himself a cup of tea, which was cold. He frowned and cut a look to the steward. "Is this how you serve your master?" Fusheng felt a headache coming on. "Are you still not done?" Yan Xiaohan ignored him. "The Marquis is a noble son of this nation. How can you treat him so carelessly? If this negligence continues, don't blame me if I report this to His Majesty for him to hand down punishment." Fusheng's fingers twitched against his leg. The steward was frightened out of his wits. He dropped to his knees at once and begged for mercy. Fusheng finally couldn't tolerate it any longer and said, "Enough! Thank you, Lord Yan, for helping me discipline my servants." The tone was sarcastic, making pointed note of Yan Xiaohan meddling in others' business. Yan Xiaohan still took the opportunity to say coldly, "Bring some hot water," before reluctantly showing mercy and allowing the steward to leave. That left 3 people in the room. Yan Xiaohan stood by the bed, looking down at Fusheng. Half of Fusheng's face was shadowed by the dim lamplight, emphasizing the depth and sharpness of his features. Even as unhealthily thin as he was now, he was still beautiful, so beautiful it was hard to look at him. Yan Xiaohan smiled insincerely. "Marquis, you are at the top of the Emperor's mind. The moment His Majesty heard you'd returned to the capital, he ordered me to personally bring an imperial physician to assess your health." Fusheng lowered his lashes and said gloomily, "Please thank His Majesty for his concern. You can go back and report that you fulfilled your duties. I'm fine. I've already been treated by the Northern Yan Army medic. There's no need to trouble an imperial physician." Some time ago, a rumor had made its way through the capital that the Marquis of Jingning was so stubborn no persuasive tactics could move him. The evidence lay before them. The accompanying physician from the Feilong Guard, Shen Yi-zi, stepped forward, intending to convince the stubborn general both out of out of a physician's compassion, and for the sake of his superior. Yan Xiaohan signaled for him to wait, raising a hand with the long-suffering expression of a man wrangling a difficult beast. His Majesty is concerned about the Marquis's injury. We came today to reassure him on this point. Yan Xiaohan fixed his gaze on Fu Shen's face and said slowly, I believe the medic of the Northern Yan army must be very skilled to gain the Marquis's trust. I'm not worried about misdiagnosis, but your injury is very serious, and it couldn't hurt to have a few more doctors take a look. What do you think? Fu Shen looked up, meeting his eyes. Yan Xiaohan shuddered as he met that flinty gaze. He had the strangest sensation that Fu Shen was glaring straight through him at someone behind his back. A moment later, Fu Shen lowered his eyes and mindlessly gathered his long, unkempt hair. He stretched out a hand, motioning weakly for Yan Xiaohan to help him up. Then, since he's already made the trip, please go ahead. Fu Shen was burning up with fever and aching all over from the fall. Still, he wasn't a particularly delicate person. Yet Yan Xiaohan, who had seen his fair share of truly frail high-ranking officials, unconsciously treated him like a fragile vase. He helped Fu Shen sit higher up against the bed frame. Afraid his head would strike the headboard, Yan Xiaohan braced an arm to cushion him from behind and kept a light hand on Fu Shen's shoulder to prevent him from sliding down. Fu Shen's hair had come loose amid these efforts, so Yan Xiaohan tucked it carefully behind his ears. After this careful rearranging, most of Fu Shen's body was now gently captured in his arms. The Marquis of Jingning must have felt this human cushion was softer than the headboard, and so, regardless of how hateful Yan Xiaohan was, he shifted in his embrace to settle comfortably. This posture felt too intimate for mortal enemies. Fortunately, Shen Yise was so focused on examining Fu Shen that he didn't notice the imperial inspector, a man feared by every official in the land, tugging up the blanket and wrapping it more snugly around the Marquis of Jingning. The Marquis let all his tension bleed out under the cover of the blanket, laying his full weight on Yan Xiaohan. The wounds are healing very well. The fever is merely from a cold. Marquis, you are injured. Your physical health is simply not what it was before. You must be careful not to be exposed to cold draughts or consume cold or irritating foods. The bedroom must be kept warm and dry. The autumn weather is getting chillier. The fire pit and brazier should be lit earlier in the evening. Your most serious injury is to the bones of your knee and to your tendons. My lord, please forgive me. With care, this injury will heal in a few years. However, I'm afraid you may find it difficult to walk or even stand in the future. Shen Yise helped Fu Shen lower his rolled-up pant leg and withdrew his pulse-taking pillow. I'll write a prescription for the Marquis to treat the cold first. As for the leg injuries, continue to treat them just as you have been. I'll discuss with the other imperial physicians when I return. Perhaps we can come up with a better solution by sharing our wisdom. Fu Shen inhaled sharply. Hey! Be gentle! Pardon? Shen Yise asked, confused. Not you. Fu Shen shook Yan Xiaohan's punishing grip off his shoulders and said politely, Thank you for your concern, Dr. Shen. I am unworthy of your thanks. Shen Yise turned his face aside. My medical skills are lacking. I am ashamed I cannot help the Marquis. Don't worry. I am well aware of how bad this injury is. I'll do what I can and leave the rest to fate. Yan Xiaohan helped him lie back down, his expression unreadable. He had been born with a kind and gentle face. One would never guess he had just grabbed the iron-willed General Hu so hard he gasped. Give the prescription to the servants and tell them to make the medicine. Yan Xiaohan instructed Shen Yitze. If there's anything you lack, tell them to go buy it. If they can't, send them to my manor to get it. Shen Yitze bowed his farewell to Fu Shen and left to fulfill his orders. Finally, only 2 people remained in the room. Yan Xiaohan pulled over a round stool and sat a polite distance from Fu Shen. Your legs? It's just as you heard. There's no helping it. Fu Shen stretched out an empty hand. Pour me a cup of tea. Yan Xiaohan frowned. It's cold. I must drink it even if it's cold, or I'll die of thirst, just as I must continue living even if my legs are broken. Or shall I hang myself over this? Yan Xiaohan was speechless. He tossed out the half cup of tea from before and poured a new one to hand to him. His Majesty was worried. He asked me to bring someone to check on your injuries. Then His Majesty can now rest assured. I don't think so, Yan Xiaohan replied bluntly. You're still breathing. Fu Shen looked at him with an expression that made clear he thought Yan Xiaohan was picking a fight over nothing. I keep thinking this must be a ruse, Yan Xiaohan said. You really didn't have a backup plan or deliberately spread false information? Why do you think so? Fu Shen returned. Because you were born with a clever face and would never do something this foolish. It's real. Fu Shen shook his head. Even if I can dodge a direct attack, who can guard against a hidden arrow? You think too highly of me if you really believe I could never fall for a trap. Yan Xiaohan wasn't expecting Fu Shen's self-assessment to be so harsh. He was momentarily stunned. Fu Shen had joined the army at a young age and had an insurmountable number of achievements. His existence itself seemed impossible. The Marquis of Jingning and the Northern Yan cavalry had become invincible legends in the minds of many. It was an image so deeply rooted in the people's hearts, even Yan Xiaohan had succumbed to this delusion. Yet, in the end, he was just an ordinary man. He wasn't a god with 3 heads and 6 arms or iron skin and bones. His body, flesh and blood, couldn't withstand a boulder falling from the sky. On the way back to the capital, I was chatting with people in a tea house. They told me there is a saying circulating the capital. With General Fu on the northern border, the capital can sleep peacefully. He sighed. It's ironic, isn't it? I've been in Northern Yan for 7-8 years now, thinking I accomplished a great deal and protected the country and its people. I was so arrogant I forgot my own surname. In the end, not only did I keep the Tartars and the Zhe people awake, I disturbed His Majesty's peaceful rest. Since you've thought it through, why don't you hand over your military authority? Go home and enjoy your retirement with some farming. Isn't it better to be an idle nobleman than to die on the battlefield or manage manage political intrigue in the capital? Stop that, Fu Shen scoffed. Is this our first meeting? Yan Xiang, I thought we could be candid with one another even if we are not close friends. To think you, of all people, would say this. He dropped his voice to a whisper. The Eastern Tartars refused to give up, and the Zhe tribe looks across the border with covetous eyes. How many have been blinded by the peace of the last decade? If I retire, who will take command of the Northern Yan cavalry? Who else is willing to spend years defending the border? When the enemy storms the border towns, the innocent people are the ones who suffer. And what does that have to do with you? Fu Shen's head shot up. His Majesty is wary of you, the court officials are suspicious of you, and the foolish common people can only blindly follow and kick up a fuss. Yan Xiaohan's tone was icy. Now that you've suffered this misfortune, who will still care about you? You're about to lose your own place. Yet somehow you have the leisure to care about the world. Don't you think that's ironic, General Fu?" The words were more than cold-hearted. They were treasonous. But unexpectedly, Fu Shen didn't refute them. Yan Xiaohan watched his profile, his eyes lowered in thought, and realizing that Fu Shen's sharp, dazzling edge was gradually fading. He was completely worn down by illness, by winds, frost, and dust, or by something else entirely. Their attitude was franker than this distance than when Their attitude was franker at this distance than when they were leaning on each other. Yan Xiaohan and Fu Shen had their disagreements, but they didn't share the level of animosity the rumors claimed. They had met at a young age, and this rivalry of so-called mortal enemies was not as dire as it was made out to be. It was merely that one was an important military official, and the other was the confidant of the emperor. If they were too close, it would rouse suspicion. That they could speak candidly like this despite their fraught relationship saved them time and trouble, but the bluntness of their words also concealed the vast differences buried beneath this fragile peace. The Fu clan had been a noble family for generations. Fu Shen's father and grandfather had both died on the battlefield. Loyalty and duty to his nation were engraved in Fu Shen's bones. Yan Xiaohan was the opposite. He was scheming and unscrupulous, a man who had stepped over countless people to climb to his current position. He couldn't understand these so-called gentlemen who, for their principles, were willing to lose their status and even their lives. They were walking different paths, after all, though the two understood their differences, that they hadn't expected this fork in the road to appear so suddenly, and at such great price. End Chapter 3. Chapter 4. The autumn breeze was cool, but the room within the Duke of Ying's manor was warm and fragrant. Fruits and snacks were arranged on the low, red-lacquered table. A youth sat on the chassis? I never know how to say that word. A youth sat on the chassis near the window with his legs crossed, feigning concentration as he stared at the book in his hand. Time passed, but he didn't flip a single page. A group of maids standing off to the side occasionally exchanged a glance, or pursed their lips, or flashed a subtle gesture at each other, always up to something. The young man was thinking about getting cozy with one or two of them when a young maid pattered in from outside and announced in a clear voice. Shoot, hang on. Sorry about that. The young man was thinking about getting cozy with one or two of them when a young maid pattered in from outside and announced in a clear voice, the madam has arrived." At once, everyone's expressions turned serious. The maids put their backs to the wall and quietly lowered their heads. The young master's leg no longer bounced, and his posture was no longer relaxed. He rightened the book and straightened his spine. By the time a woman in luxurious clothing walked in, she was greeted with the very picture of a diligent student. Taking the supporting arm of a maid, Lady Qin lowered herself down onto the chassis. The young man stood up and bowed to greet her with a polite "Mother," then sat beside her. Lady Qin held his hand and stated firmly, "It's getting dark. Why don't you light some lamps? If you're not careful, you'll hurt your eyes." The maids understood her unspoken order. They swiftly lit the lamps and brought fresh tea. The young man replied, "I was so absorbed in studying I didn't realize. Mother, what brings you here at this hour?" "I went to the front courtyard to discuss something with your third uncle," Lady Qin said. "I was passing by on my way back and thought, thought to save you a trip later tonight." The young man rolled his eyes. "Is this about my older brother?" Lady Qin speared him with a disapproving look. "You would know. All you do is gossip the day away instead of studying. The news has spread all over the capital. What would I need to seek it out?" The young man sneered. "Everyone is saying his legs are broken, so he couldn't remain on the border anymore and had to slink home to the capital to retire." Lady Qin pursed her lips, but didn't chastise him. She glanced up to the servants. "You were dismissed. I want to talk to Ya-Er for a bit. Everyone dispersed. 2 older maids remained in the corridor, and the others went to mill about in the yard. All the maids who had served the young master were charming young ladies, innocent but still conscious of the honor of the Fu family name. A pair of close friends chattered about what they had heard in the young master's room. The first said, "No wonder Da Gongzhi lives in his own manor. If he were at home, who knows how she would torment him." The second girl laughed. "It might not go as you think. You have no idea. When he was still here, our madam and young master were like mice in the shadow of a cat. He looks graceful and elegant, but his temper is thunderous. That's a real man who stands tall and proud. Da Gongzhi is a hero, but his name can't be spoken in his own home. Our young master is heartless and disregards his real elder brother. Instead, he listens to the gossip of untrustworthy characters." The second maid lightly smacked the back of her hand. "What do you know? How can he be considered the young master's real elder brother if they don't share the same mother? You know full well only the second young lady, the princess consort of Qi, can truly call that man brother. As for our young master and his sister, the second consort, in his mind, they're probably 3,000 li farther apart than cousins." The first wife of the former Duke of Ying, Fu Tingzhong, had died early, leaving behind a son, Fu Shen, and a daughter, Fu Ling. When Fu Ling was 17, she married the third prince, the Prince of Qi, as his princess consort. Fu Tingzhong's second wife, Lady Qin, had 2 daughters and 1 son. Her first daughter, Fu Ting, had been selected to be the crown prince's second consort and now lived in the inner palace. Her son, Fu Ya, and her second daughter, Fu Xi, were still at home, being raised in Lady Qin's care. By the time Lady Qin married into the family, Fu Xian was old enough to have his own sensibilities. He had never been close to his stepmother, and his half-brother Fu Ya, after his half-brother Fu Ya was born, they became even more estranged. Since Fu Xian, as eldest son, stood in the way of succession, Lady Qin's own son would never inherit the title of duke. In this way, perhaps the animosity between Lady Qin and Fu Xian was inevitable. But before Lady Qin could take any action, Fu Tingzhong had been assassinated at the northern border. At the time, in order to win over his meritorious officials, the Yuan-Tai emperor had lavished favor upon his generals. Rather than bestow on Fu Tingxin the lesser title, he granted him the title Duke of Ying directly. When Fu Tingxin later passed away himself, Fu Xian was sent to the battlefield even before his mourning period was over to manage the brewing tensions on the border. It reflected poorly on everyone for the position of duke to be vacant for long, so the officials in the Ministry of Rights agreed to let the third son, Fu Tingyi, inherit the title. When Fu Shen returned with his many achievements, the Yuan-Tai emperor had separately conferred on him the title of Marquis of Jingning. Lady Qin took this as a golden opportunity to propose that Fu Shen remove to a separate manor. 2 noble titles sharing a residence, she claimed. would attract criticism. To Fusheng, her motives were completely transparent. She was concerned only with the ducal title and how to cut his ties to it. But while Lady Qin was short-sighted, the vision of the new Duke of Ying, Fu Tingyi, was farther-reaching. The real backbone of the Fu family was not the title of duke, but the Northern Yan cavalry. 3 generations of the Fu family had forged unbreakable ties with the Northern Yan army, and if the command was to continue to pass down through their family, the Northern Yan army would soon be renamed the Fu family army. When that time came, what would the world think? More importantly, what would the one sitting on the throne think? It was better to make a preemptive retreat. Fusheng would take the command of the Northern Yan army in the future, but the estate of the Duke of Ying, or rather the Fu family, could not be tied any longer to this force. The situation as it stood was the result of weighing these pros and cons. The commander of the Northern Yan army, the Marquis of Jingning, Fusheng, moved into his own residence and had almost no contact with the duke's household. Fu Tingyi, the 3rd son of the Fu family, inherited the title of Duke of Ying and found his calling as an idle nobleman. Lady Qin, as Fu Tingshang's widow, lived in the duke's mansion with her children, counting the days until Fu Ya came of age so she could request he be named heir. Both mother and son detested Fusheng. Lady Qin was weighed down by a guilty conscience. She couldn't bear to see him succeed, fearing he would one day take revenge on her for turning him out of his father's house. In contrast, Fu Ya was probably more upset Fusheng had never knelt and offered him the position of heir that he felt he was naturally owed. In Fu Ya's room, these 2 bastions of family feeling sat together. Lady Qin frowned at her son, chiding him. It's fine for you to say what your heart desires when you're at home, but don't gossip outside. Mother, Fu Ya tossed a piece of fruit into his mouth mid-complaint. He's already split from the Fu family. Why are you afraid of him? What do you know? How can you say such nonsense? Lady Qin smacked him lightly on the leg. His parents' memorial tablets are here. He's only moved to a different residence. How can he not be considered a member of the Fu family? He is your elder brother, after all, and holds a high position at his young age. Though he's been more restrained in recent years, he was as fearsome as a devil in his youth. Be careful not to fall into his hands. Fu Ya made a thoughtless sound of agreement. In a few years, we will ask for you to be named heir, Lady Qin continued. Your 3rd uncle favors Fusheng. He's waiting for you to make a mistake. So when the time comes, you absolutely must not take a single step out of place. Do I make myself clear? She continued, her voice so soft it was almost a whisper. My son, be patient a little longer. When the time comes, both the title of duke and the family inheritance will be yours. No one will be able to take it from you. Even Fusheng will only be able to watch from the sidelines. Fu Ya's heart stirred. He looked up. Mother has her ways. Lady Qin gripped his hand firmly. Don't worry. In the Eastern Palace, the residence of the Crown Prince, Princess Consort Sen sat in front of the bronze mirror and reached up to take the numerous pearl and jade pins from her hair. The maid who was helping her leaned over and whispered, Your Highness, Madame Qin of the Duke of Ying's residence sent someone to pay respects to 2nd Consort Fu earlier today. They spoke in the palace for a long time. The Crown Prince's consort pondered that for a moment, then smiled in realization. Let her be. I heard the Marquis of Jingning has returned to the capital. Madame Qin must be feeling anxious and came to ask favors from His Highness. This maid was one of the prince's consort. This maid was one the prince's consort had brought with her when she married a close confidant. She freely asked, "But isn't the Marquis of Jingning disabled, not dead? said Princess Consort Sen. "The Marquis of Jingning has a good reputation among the common people and the court. He also holds military authority over the northern frontier. If he returns to the army in the future, the Northern Yan Army is full of subordinates who will respond to his command. If I may speak out of turn, not only Madame Qin, but even His Highness must be respectful to the Marquis." Princess Consort Sen's father was Sen Hongfang, the governor of Qingchu, who had some ties with the Duke of Ying's family. The princess consort had been influenced by him from a young age, and had great aspirations, regardless of her gender. If Fu Shen hadn't gone to the northern frontier, Sen Hongfang might have considered him seriously as a candidate for his son-in-law. Disregarding his temperament, the Marquis of Jingning was an upright man, young and brave, with many great military achievements. He was the object of secret affection for any number of unmarried maidens. Princess Consort Sen grasped another hairpin. "I recall Second Consort Fu has a younger brother who's waiting to be named heir to the title of Duke of Ying in 2 years?" "Yes." "You know, a few years ago, His Highness the Crown Prince originally set his sights on the Marquis of Jingning's full sister, now the Prince of Qi's consort. He sent someone to privately inquire with the Fu family. At the time, the Duke of Ying was still the second Fu son, Fu Tingxin. Since she was his eldest niece and not his daughter, he felt he couldn't make the decision on his own. He asked her brother, the Marquis of Jingning, about it. The Marquis must have been about the same age as Second Consort Fu's younger brother must have been about the same age as Second Consort Fu's younger brother is now. Well, when he heard his sister was unhappy with the match, he refused it without a second thought. The Fu family are tough, you see, unafraid even to offend His Highness if it meant letting his little sister pick a husband she'd be happy with." Her hand brushed her temple, and she felt a faint, inexplicable pang of sadness. The princess consort of Qi, Fu Ling, had such a good elder brother. It was truly enviable. Back then, Lady Qin threw away her reputation to grasp at the position of heir, sending her daughter into the palace and splitting the estates. Princess Consort Sen sneered. "She made a mess of everything. And what was the result? Didn't the Marquis's sister still marry the Prince of Qi in a lavish ceremony? Now Lady Qin can only rely on Second Consort Fu when she has problems, and must avoid me more carefully than a thief. If her son were half the man the Marquis of Jingning was, would Second Consort Fu have to swallow her anger and submit to me?" Even this maid didn't know that the name of the Marquis of Jingning touched a vague faraway regret in the princess consort's heart. She only thought that her young lady's tongue was particularly sharp tonight, and responded quietly, "Then, Your Highness, should we warn her to stay away from His Highness for a few days?" Princess Consort Sen looked into the bronze mirror and considered for a moment. Eventually, she waved her hand. "No need. What can they achieve? Even if His Highness wanted to help them, it would be pointless." That night, the Crown Prince stayed in Chunfang Pavilion in the Eastern Palace. Second Consort Fu took off his coat and helped him wash up. Though she was as attentive as usual, her fine mouth was set in displeasure. But a sorrowful beauty was still a charming sight. The prince was delighted even by her discountenance and couldn't help but take her into his arms. Later that night, when the tides of passion had receded, he asked lazily, "What's wrong? What troubles have distressed you so?" At once, Fu Ting rose from the bed and knelt penitently. "Today, my mother sent someone to deliver a message. It disquieted me so much that I allowed my mind to wander. I beg your Highness's forgiveness." The Crown Prince reached out to tug her back into his embrace. I forgive you. What is it? Let's hear it." Fu Ting's brow smoothed, and she looked as if she had seen her savior. The sight of her eyes, brimming with adoration and trust, inflated his already considerable ego. She leaned closer and whispered into the Crown Prince's ear. "To be honest with your Highness, it's about my elder brother, the Marquis of Jingning, Fu Shen." End chapter 4.